Chapter 12. Ulysses meets with David Hunter Duncan. David Hunter Duncan typically slept much later than his early bird wife. It was not unusual for Hope to shake her husband's shoulder and wake him with something that needed his attention. But this morning his unflappable spouse seemed a bit fearful. That crazy-ass nigger is on the patio. What are you talking about? That P.O. or C.S. or where the hell he is. He's on the patio? Yes. Where are the dogs? They're licking his fingers. David Hunter Duncan sighed and sat up on the edge of the king-side Joseph bed. The first luxury he had purchased after being declared a lottery winner. He paused for a few heartbeats and then stretched and grabbed his neatly folded black sweatpants, black t-shirt, and white briefs that rested atop a wicker chest at the foot of the Joe, as he often referred to it. He dressed hastily and shuffled his bare feet across the carpet. David Hunter Duncan stumbled through his hallway and paused at his Davy Crockett kitchen door to gaze out at his unexpected guest. With eyes stretched open, Ulysses cocked his neck and stared back at David Hunter Duncan. The reluctant host was not given to morning humor, but the sight of his former community supervisor made him chuckle on the inside. David Hunter Duncan unsnapped the lock on the Davy Crockett screen door and slowly swaggered the 10 feet to the round cedar table in the middle of the deck. He stared coldly at his uninvited caller. He was tall and lanky, and he looked tall and lanky even when he was seated. He dressed in a plush ankle-length robe. His short-cropped hair was just long enough to support many LCD Christmas tree lights that were arranged in a pattern that suggested a crown of thorns. He held a jumbo styrofoam coffee in his lap, and he gestured at the 2 jumbo coffees situated in a cardboard container on the tabletop. He seemed to be waiting for David Hunter Duncan to start the conversation. With a deliberate and constricted motion, David Hunter Duncan seated himself in a cushioned deck chair directly across from his forenoon surprise. I got a letter from the county a few months back stating that my parole had been completed. I miss you too, old friend, Ulysses stated with obvious sarcasm. These are some piss-poor guard dogs, David Hunter remarked as he nodded at the dogs that now licked Ulysses' ankles. Female and heat urine. You can buy it at any bait shop. I thought that only tames the males. That's a female there, David Hunter Duncan emphasized as he pointed to the crevasse that sniffed at Ulysses' left ankle. Ulysses chuckled. Secret ingredient, secret ingredient. He switched topics abruptly. I know you drink your coffee cream, no sugar, so that's what this one is. He pointed a long index finger at one of the generous coffee club specials. David Hunter Duncan did not accept the coffee. He stared deep into Ulysses' eyes and waited for him to kill the silence. I didn't know how your wife takes her coffee, so I bought her a black coffee. David Hunter Duncan stared coldly. Look, Ulysses began. I know this is the 21st century. I know that Texas will always be Texas and black is black and white is white, and I have violated some sort of eternal boundary, and I might have antagonized a proud white man. God damn it, David Hunter Duncan roared. Do you always have to play the fucking race card? I don't let my own family come over without calling. Maybe I just don't like nutbags. Maybe the kind of nutbag who thinks he's Jesus scaring the shit out of my wife. Ulysses nodded calmly. He paused before speaking. Point taken. But remember, I don't have your current cell, and I really need to talk to you. I'm sorry if I overdressed for the occasion. David Hunter Duncan did not flinch. Ulysses stirred anew. I'll cut to the chase. I burnt bridges with my family. The only legit job I ever had was a CS, and I can't get that back due to my perceived mental status. I want to start my own thing, La Cosa Nostra. That means our thing, you know. David Hunter Duncan crossed his arms. See, I know you and Ray and Garfield are doing okay. If I get y'all into the big time, I can make introductions. David Hunter Duncan's eyes were as narrow as a coin slot on a penny slot machine. Ulysses then calmly asked his host to remove the dogs as they tickled his ankles, and the hair would be hard to remove from his robe. Suddenly, David Hunter Duncan yelled, "Corner!" and the dogs dashed to the farthest region of the enclosed backyard, where they both seated themselves and stared back at their master. Ulysses voiced his respect for his dog trainer companion and abruptly returned to business. Look, it didn't make any sense for you to trust me. You're a convict and I'm a member of the law enforcement establishment. Gotcha. You did not get to where you are by playing the fool. Gotcha. David Hunter Duncan breathed evenly. Ulysses continued. I understand. But you get involved with the law dog. Two of you play the same gig and the shit hits the fan. The law dog said, I was working undercover. I dig it. David Hunter Duncan rubbed his eyes. I want this much per week as a consultant. David Hunter Duncan stopped rubbing his eyes. He looked at the number, which seemed absurdly large, and he recoiled slightly. He then yawned slowly and deliberately. I know it's a big number, but you and your buddies will be making it a lot more. Everyone benefits. David Hunter Duncan leaned back in his chair and stared at the two guard dogs seated in the far corner of his privacy-fenced backyard. We got two barriers. One, you wonder if I can pull my weight. But the bigger barrier is trust. David Hunter Duncan yawned deeper than before. Okay, here's the deal. I'm going to take care of your son's problem. David Hunter Duncan turned abruptly and stared deeply into Ulysses' eyes. Ulysses stared back. David Hunter Duncan deliberately reached for the coffee with cream. He removed the lid and took a cautious sip as he stared off past the dogs. I can't make it happen for free, but there won't be no profiteering either. There's not too much pro bono in that sort of endeavor. See, I'm going to have to make payroll myself. I'm sure you understand. David Hunter Duncan wished he had a cigarette. He had stopped smoking at the onset of his last incarceration 9 years ago. Since then, he occasionally craved a cigarette. Now was one such time. I won't ask for a penny till the job's completed, but I will need this amount immediately afterward. On the flip side of the same piece of paper, Ulysses displayed another dollar figure. David Hunter Duncan glanced at the number and then stared at the horizon once more. Ulysses rolled the typing paper into an empty cigarette. He removed some keys from his pocket and converted them into an improvised roach clip. He then produced a lighter and set the rolled piece of paper on fire. No one needs to see those figures, Ulysses summarized. David Hunter Duncan fidgeted in his seat. He did not trust maniacs who played with fire, and he breathed a small relief when the flame was extinguished. Ulysses then startled him with his next words. I know you did time with Billy J. Carver. He paused before continuing. You should use someone else. Fortunately, Carver also did time with members of the Mexican Alliance. That's where they will probably focus their attention. David Hunter Duncan started to perspire, and he could feel his face flush ever so slightly. We can't follow up with members of the Alliance, but we can complete the job with some banditos who might plausibly have ties to the organization. There was a long pause, and finally David Hunter Duncan spoke. How is your father doing? I heard he had a stroke a while back. Ulysses seemed surprised by the question. Last time I saw him, he was in bad shape. His mind was sharp as ever, but he couldn't talk, and he was partially paralyzed. Ulysses paused for a moment and stared slightly upward. He looked back at David Hunter Duncan and continued. Thanks for asking, he said softly. David Hunter Duncan smiled. Ulysses broke the brief silence. I tell you, I pieced it all together. See, I don't really sleep. I catnap. Every 10 or so hours, I doze off for about an hour. So I read the news webs, I scour the court documents, and you'd be surprised how much you can learn if you read for 22 hours a day. Anyway, the Rosetta Stone was the Reverend Stanley Turnipseed. David Hunter Duncan frowned ever so slightly. It's such a wacky name. It's not like there are dozens and dozens of Reverend Stanley Turnipseeds out there. I knew it had to be the same hamster prick who ruined a good thing a couple years back. It just had to be him. Ulysses sat upright and pulled the chair closer to the table. He had David Hunter Duncan's undivided attention, and he sensed that it was time to bridge their personal space. See, a few years back, there was a movement to launch churches for Leos. It may not make any sense to you, but law enforcement officers face more dilemmas that civilians, or criminals for that matter, can never understand. Besides, Leos faced discrimination, even in houses of worship. The movement was started by this big Cajun named Reverend Chilton Pontrain. He was part French and part Afro and part Native and part Asian, part Spanish. A one-man rainbow coalition. He was a former sheriff's deputy and a man of the cloth. He served as a chaplain to the Louisiana State Police. Anyway, I went to one of his services in Baton Rouge, and it was a beautiful thing. Beautiful. The Reverend had this booming preaching voice, and he had a heavenly singing voice, and we all felt the Spirit, and it just felt so good to see everyone worshiping together. Black, white, Spanish. We were all blue. We were all together. The Leo churches spread across the South. It was underground, just Leos and their families. America's fastest growing religion, and it was something no search engine could locate. Then the Reverend Pontrain died of a heart attack. Thousands of Leos of every color descended on Baton Rouge to bury this great man. Little did we know that the Reverend Pontrain's dream would die with him. A week later, Stanley Turnipseed tries to segregate the churches. We had come so far. Our Moses led us into Camelot. A brief shining moment, and it was gone. Long gone. Now this cracker started babbling about style of worship in churches where everyone felt comfortable. Ulysses stopped to swig his coffee and tried to slow down. He took another long drink and then continued. The Leo churches fell into chaos, and Stanley Turnipseed took his Latter-day Klansmen to northern Mississippi. He paused and stretched his torso forward to address his client. In a whisper, he commented, I bet if James Charles Pierce went away, your son's situation would improve. David Hunter Duncan took a large glug of his warm coffee. Ulysses maintained his closeness as he tried to close the deal. As you know, most niches are like life insurance salesmen. They sell a policy to their best friend and their brother-in-law, and that's the end of their career. Same way with snitches. They rat out their friends and family, and that's it for their career, and they find another way to make people miserable. But every now and then a snooper snitch will come on the scene. He's so good he makes a career out of his treachery. The cops befriend him. They even worship with him. A cop minus the fat-ass pension. It all clicked when I read the news web about the Olive Branch shootout. I didn't know Pierce's name until then, but I had heard about the Southern Super Snitch. I can't tell you all the reasons I hate Pierce, but it's all about race and racism. He sent a lot of small-time brothers and sisters away with his ZZ Top beard and his biker persona. The world would be a better place without that Ku Klux shithead. David Hunter Duncan shifted in his seat. Ulysses' voice was now a whisper. Would it help your case if Pierce was eliminated? David Hunter Duncan slowly and deliberately killed the remainder of his coffee. So we got a deal. I just need to reemphasize that the removal fee has to be paid promptly at the completion of the procedure. David Hunter Duncan rose from the table, and as he lifted Hope's coffee with his left hand, the cardboard container remained attached to the cup. He chose his words carefully. I want to thank you for bringing me and Hope our morning coffee. And as Ulysses welcomed his thanks, David Hunter Duncan chose his next words even more carefully. He did not say goodbye and good luck. He did not say nice chatting with you or have a good one. He did not say it was good to see you, Ulysses. He chose the highly precise, it's always good to see you, Ulysses. Ulysses nodded. They had a deal. It's always good to see you, Ulysses. Ulysses nodded. They had a deal.